I was 22 the summer Grandma died, and I hated her for it. She'd been the only steady thing in my life, the one who kept the lights on when Mama ran off and Daddy drank himself stupid. Then one Tuesday, she just didn't wake up. The funeral was small, cheap, and over quick. Everybody went back to the house to eat cold ham and tell the same stories about how tough she'd been. I couldn't stand it. I sat on the porch steps with a half-gone bottle of Evan Williams and felt the hollers closing in around me like a fist. By midnight, I was mean drunk and hurting. I kept hearing a voice in my head telling me to quit acting the fool, and the only thing that made sense was to prove I wasn't scared of anything she'd left behind, not even the ghost everybody swore walked Old Bethel after dark. People said she went there the night before she passed, stood at her own future plot like she was picking out curtains. I told myself that was horse shit. Told myself a lot of things. Old Bethel sits up on a ridge above the creek, maybe 2 miles from the house if you cut through the laurel. The iron fence is old plantation stuff, spikes bent from decades of kids climbing over to drink and screw and carve their names. I walked the dirt road with the bottle swinging from 2 fingers, boots crunching gravel, cicadas screaming like they knew what I was about. The gate was supposed to be padlocked since the church folded, but the chain hung loose and orange with rust. I set the bottle on the ground, grabbed the top rail, and hauled myself over. My boot heel scraped metal, and the second both feet hit the inside path, the gate creaked shut behind me with a sound like a judge's gavel. I laughed, loud and ugly. Figured the wind caught it. Then I looked closer. That latch hadn't moved in 20 years. The chain was still threaded through, still padlocked, but the gate was closed tight and the rust looked wet, like somebody'd oiled it fresh. I told myself I was drunk. Told myself a lot of things that night. The cemetery was darker than any place has a right to be. No moon, clouds thick as wet wool. The headstones rose up pale and crooked, leaning like old men who'd forgotten how to stand straight. I knew every row by heart. Grandma used to drag me up here on Decoration Day to put peonies on kin I never met. I started walking, hands in my pockets, whistling just to hear something that wasn't silence. The whistling died quick. The night swallowed it. My phone still showed 3 bars. I pulled it out, thumb hovering over my cousin Ray's name. Hit call. Rang twice, then he picked up, voice thick with sleep. Hello? The line went dead. Tried again. Same thing. Rang, he answered, cut off. Third time I got his voicemail mid-sentence. I cursed and shoved the phone away. Figured the ridge was blocking signal. Figured wrong. I walked toward the back section where the new plots were, where Grandma's raw dirt mound still smelled like clay and lime. That's when I noticed the names. I passed Uncle Cecil's stone first. He died when I was 9. Except the carving wasn't Cecil Ray Cochran anymore. It said something else, letters shifting like heat waves. I blinked hard, looked again. Back to normal. My skin prickled. I kept moving. Every stone I knew looked right at first glance, but if I turned away and turned back quick, the names had changed, dates sliding forward, backward, sideways. People who weren't dead yet, people who never existed. My pulse started knocking in my throat. Near the middle of the cemetery, the ground rises a little knoll. Grandma's plot sat waiting there, yawning open like a mouth. They'd filled it that morning, but the dirt looked fresh turned still, darker than the rest. I stopped maybe 10 feet away and stared. Something was wrong with the mound. Too neat, too perfect. And right in the center, a raw place where the grass hadn't been seeded yet, my name was scratched into the dirt. First, middle, last. Birth date, correct. Death date, tomorrow. I stood there so long my legs went numb. The bottle was still outside the gate. I'd never picked it back up. I was stone sober now and shaking. That's when the whispering started. It wasn't wind, wasn't my head. Soft mountain voices, women mostly, layered over each other like choir practice in an empty church. I caught pieces. Been waiting on you, honey. Time to finish what she started. Ground's cold, but it remembers. I knew that cadence, knew the rise and fall. It was Grandma's voice underneath 'em all, patient as ever, calling me like she used to from the kitchen when supper was ready. I ran. Not away, just ran. Down one row, up another, past stones I'd hidden behind as a kid playing sardines. Every path I took bent back toward that same iron gate. I'd swear on a stack of Bibles I covered every inch of that half-acre twice. But the fence never changed, never got closer. My lungs burned. Briars tore my jeans. At some point, I realized I was crying like a little kid. I ended up on my knees in front of Grandma's grave again. The writing in the dirt was deeper now, letters pressed in with some wide, like a hand. My phone lit up by itself, no signal, just a clock ticking minutes I didn't remember living. 3:17 a.m. I hadn't looked at it since midnight. The whispering got louder, almost kind. You climbed in, baby. You gotta stay till it's done. I screamed at him to shut up, screamed at Grandma to leave me alone, screamed until my voice shredded. Then I heard the latch. A metallic scrape, slow and deliberate. I spun around. The gate hung open 6 inches, swaying gentle like somebody just walked through. No wind, no footsteps, just open. I didn't think. I bolted. Jumped the lowest part of the fence where the spikes were bent, caught my jacket on a rusty point and ripped half the back out. Landed hard in the gravel, rolled, come up running. Didn't stop until I hit the creek road and the porch light of the house was in sight. Collapsed on the steps gasping, tasting blood where I'd bit my tongue. When the sun came up, I walked back up there with Ray and his shotgun. Both of us hung over and spooked. The gate was shut tight again, chain rusted solid like always. My bottle sat right where I'd left it, label peeled half off, whiskey evaporated to a finger of brown. We walked the rows. Grandma's mound looked normal, grass seed already sprouting pale green. No writing, no footprints except ours. Ray laughed it off, said I'd had a bad drunk and dreamed the whole thing. I almost believed him. Almost. Because when I got home and took off my boots, the left one had red clay packed tight inside, wet and fresh. And on the sole, pressed deep like someone stood on it while I ran, was a perfect print of a woman's bare foot, smaller than mine, toes splayed wide, the way Grandma's always were from going barefoot her whole life. I poured that clay out in the yard and watched it steam in the morning cold. Haven't touched whiskey since. Haven't gone near Old Bethel, day or night. But some evenings when the wind comes down off the ridge just right, I still hear that gate creak. And I know, sure as I know my own name, it's waiting on me to come back and finish climbing in proper. Because the footprints I left going in are still there. Ray showed me last week when he made me look, said maybe it'd help me get over it. There's one set, leading in, none coming out. Me and my cousin Travis worked the night shift at the Gas and Go on Route 52, the one with the flickering Exxon sign and the coffee that tasted like burnt pennies. Shift ended at 11, and the quickest way home was straight through Mount Olivet Cemetery. Folks said don't cut through after dark, but we were 19 and 20, full of Mountain Dew and Skoal, and the idea of ghosts didn't bother us near as much as walking the extra mile around the ridge. The cemetery sat on a little plateau above the river, flat and open, wind always blowing cold even in summer. We'd hop the low stone wall on the backside, follow the gravel service road between the sections, and be out the front gate in 7 minutes flat. Never saw a soul. Until we did. It was February, one of those raw nights where the damp gets in your bones and stays. We came over the wall like always, boots crunching on frozen grass, sharing a cigarette to keep our fingers warm. Halfway across the older section, where the stones are thin and leaning, dates mostly 1800s, we saw her, an old woman on her knees in front of a small marker, wearing nothing but a faded housecoat and bedroom shoes. Moon was just a sliver, but we could see her plain, white hair down her back, moving slow and careful like she was tending a garden. She had a mason jar in one hand and was pouring something onto a bunch of those cheap plastic roses people stick in the ground when they can't afford real ones. Bright red petals, still shiny even in the cold. Water ran off and soaked into the dirt like the flowers were drinking. Travis nudged me and whispered, "Granny's lost her mind." We figured dementia happens all the time around here. Old folks wander off, end up places they shouldn't. We kept walking quiet so we wouldn't scare her. She never looked up. Next night she was there again. Same spot, same house coat, same jar. Only this time we stopped a little closer, maybe 20 yards. She hummed while she poured, some old hymn I halfway remembered from childhood. The plastic roses looked newer, brighter red, almost wet. Meanwhile, every real flower we passed, plastic poinsettias somebody left at Christmas, a silk wreath on the next row, had turned black and shriveled like they'd been torched. By the third night, we were curious. Fourth night, we brought flashlights but kept them off. Fifth night, we stood right at the edge of the lamplight from the highway and watched her finish the jar, screw the lid back on slow, then press her palms into the dirt like she was tucking someone in. Travis said it first. "Them roses ain't faded at all. Everything else is dying but them." We told ourselves it was the cold killing the real flowers, told ourselves a lot of stupid things that week. On the seventh night, the wind had teeth, and we were wore out from restocking the beer cooler, but we still went through the cemetery, because neither of us would admit we were starting to get spooked. She was waiting, not kneeling this time, standing, facing the wall, like she knew we were coming. The jar hung from 2 fingers. When our boots crunched gravel, she turned, slow, and smiled, the way my mama used to when I came in from Pliers and Pride. Even in the dark, I could see her eyes were milky, cataracts thick as creek ice. Travis found his voice first. "Ma'am, you need help getting home? It's powerful cold." She tilted her head, still smiling. "Just keeping him pretty," she said, voice soft as flannel. "He likes to look nice when he comes back up." The hair on my neck stood straight. Travis took a half step back. I couldn't move. She raised the jar toward us, gentle, like offering sweet tea on a porch in July. "You boys want some? It's fresh." We ran. I don't remember deciding to. One second we were standing there, next we were vaulting the wall so hard my shin split open on the capstone. Didn't feel it till later. We didn't stop till we hit Travis's trailer, slammed the door, and stood there panting like dogs. He grabbed a 410 from behind the couch, and we waited for knocking that never came. After an hour, we laughed, shaky and embarrassed. Said the old lady was nuts, that was all. Said the water was probably just water. 3 mornings later, the sheriff knocked on my mama's door while I was eating cornflakes. Said they'd found Mrs. Arbutus Caldwell dead in Mount Olivet, curled on her side atop her son's grave like she'd laid down for a nap. Housecoat frozen stiff, lips and fingernails blue. In her hands she clutched those plastic roses, only they weren't plastic anymore. Stems had gone brown and woody, thorns sharp enough the deputy cut himself pulling them loose. Roots had pushed 6-8 inches into the ground, white and curling, like something newborn trying to crawl deeper. The headstone read, "Timothy Caldwell, beloved son, 1959 to 1973. Car accident on the curve by the old Texaco." Everybody knew the story. Mrs. Arbutus never remarried, never left a little house on Sinking Creek, kept her boy's room exactly the way he died. Bought those plastic flowers every spring, replaced them when the sun faded the color. Deputy said the grave looked tended, dirt soft, no frost on it, even though the rest of the cemetery was white. They buried her next to him a week later. Simple service. I stood at the back with Travis, both of us quiet. When the preacher finished and folks started drifting away, we hung back to pay respects. That's when we saw the flowers. They'd grown. Not just sprouted, grown tall, stems thick as broom handles, leaves dark and waxy. Roses the color of fresh blood, perfect, heavy, swaying though there wasn't any wind. A wren of 'em circled both graves now, tight as a fence.
The plastic tag that used to say made in China was gone, rotted away or swallowed. The petals looked soft, almost warm. We haven't cut through Mount Olivet since. We take the long way, add 20 minutes even when it's pouring rain or 20 degrees. Sometimes, when the wind shifts just right coming off the ridge, you can smell it down by the gas and go. Turned earth and lilies, strong as the day of a funeral. And if you look up toward the cemetery lights, real faint, you might catch a glimpse of movement, just a suggestion of a housecoat fluttering between the stones. I drive past slow some evenings. Those roses are still blooming, bigger every year, spreading. The caretaker tried pulling them once, said the roots went down farther than the coffin, wrapped around something he wouldn't talk about after. He quit the next week. Sometimes I dream about that mason jar, dream about the way Mrs. Arbutus smiled when she offered it, dream about what might have happened if we'd been polite and taken a drink. I wake up, tasting dirt. And every spring, when the real flowers start pushing up through the frost, I notice the black ones first, the crocuses and jonquils that come up withered and curled around Mount Olivet, like something down deep is still thirsty. I reckon it is.
I was 16 the summer I mowed Pine Ridge Cemetery, the year the county paid $12 an hour cash under the table to any boy dumb enough to push a loud machine around the dead all day. The place sat on a ridge above the North Fork of the Hostin, maybe 40 acres of rolling ground split by a gravel road that looped like a noose. Newest section down front had upright marble and plastic flowers. Back section was older, tilting limestone and cedar trees. Then farther still was the part nobody liked to talk about. A half-acre square fenced off with rusted barbed wire where the colored folks got buried before anybody cared about names. Just field stones stuck upright in the dirt, some no bigger than a dinner plate. Weeds growing tall enough to hide a man if he laid down quiet. I never had trouble with the mower anywhere else. Old Briggs and Stratton on a snapper that belonged to the church deacon. Thing coughed and sputtered but always ran. Except when I crossed that back corner. Every single time I steered between those leaning stones, the engine would choke like somebody pinched a fuel line, then die cold. Not stumble, not stall, die. I'd sit there 10, 15 minutes, pulling the cord till my shoulder burned, and finally it would catch again like nothing happened. Happened so regular I started timing it with my watch. Never less than 9 minutes, never more than 17. I told myself soft ground, low spot, water in the gas, anything to let me keep cashing the checks. July came in hotter than a forge. I'd start at 6 in the morning when the dew still soaked your jeans and try to be done by 2 before the sun cooked you inside your own skin. One Thursday I was running late, had to finish the back section after the mist burned off. Sun straight up, cicadas screaming like banshees, sweat running off me fast enough to drip off my elbows. I cut the rows quick, saving that corner for last because I knew what was coming. Pushed the mower between the wire and felt the engine hiccup, then nothing. Dead again. I cussed, wiped my face on my shirt, and sat on the seat waiting for the usual delay. That's when I noticed the ground. One particular spot, maybe 3 feet by 6, dirt mounded a little higher than the rest, one flat field stone laid at the head like somebody once tried to mark it proper. The mound rose. Not much, maybe an inch, slow and deliberate, like a chest filling with air after holding breath too long. I stared so hard my eyes watered. It fell again, same slow rhythm. Rose, fell, rose, like something big underneath practicing how to breathe. I laughed at first, short and nervous, told myself heat stroke, told myself gopher, mold, anything. But the rhythm never changed. In, out, in, out. I killed the weight and walked over, boots sinking in soft dirt that should have baked hard by noon. Knelt and laid my hand flat on the mound. Warm, warmer than the air. And under my palm the faintest push, like a heartbeat too deep to feel proper. I grabbed a weed eater just to have something in my hands and poked the shaft into the center. Dirt gave easy, loamy, almost wet.
I leaned weight on it and felt it slide maybe a foot before it stopped against something solid but yielding. Then the ground sighed. Not wind, not settling, a long, slow exhale that smelled like river mud and coffin wood. The weed-eater handle jumped in my grip like something grabbed it from below and tugged once, testing. I jerked back so hard I fell on my tailbone. The mound settled flat while I watched, smooth as if somebody raked it. I left the weed-eater where it lay, cranked the mower on the first pull for once, and finished the rest of the cemetery with my heart hammering loud enough I swore the dead could hear it. I went back at closing time, near 8:30, when the shadows stretched long and the heat finally broke. Wanted to prove to myself I'd imagined it all. The mound looked normal, just a slight rise with that one field stone. My weed-eater sat where I dropped it, string head half buried like it grew there. I knelt to pull it free, and that's when I saw the print. Perfect outline of a hand pressed up from underneath, fingers splayed wide, palm broader than any man I knew. Skinny at the wrist, knuckles ridged, nails long and curved. Dirt around it pushed outward in ridges like whatever made it had been trying for years and finally got close enough to reach. I put my own hand over it for comparison. Mine looked like a child's. I didn't sleep that night, kept seeing that print every time I closed my eyes. Next morning I called the deacon and told him I had strep throat, couldn't mow till Monday. He grumbled but paid me for the week anyway. I avoided the ridge the whole weekend, stayed down by the creek fishing and pretending everything was fine. Monday I went back determined to act normal. Mowed the front first, worked my way slow. When I reached the wire fence, I killed the engine and just stared. The print was gone, dirt smoothed over, but the mound looked higher now, almost proud of the ground. I left it alone. Finished every other inch and never crossed that line again. Told the deacon the mower wouldn't run back there, bad gas or something. He didn't care as long as the paying section looked neat. Years slid by. I graduated, left for a while, came back when my mama got sick. Took a job at the lumber yard, never mowed again. But I'd drive past Pine Ridge sometimes and feel that old pull, like a fish hook behind my ribs. Last October they buried Miss Loretta Hayes in the new section, heart attack at 78. Family wanted her close to her husband who'd been gone 20 years, but the only spot left was that corner plot nobody ever claimed. County said it was fine, no records, just field stones. They dug anyway. I heard about it at the store, couldn't help myself, drove up there after work. Backhoe had torn the ground open wide, red clay piled high. The crew was gone for the day. I walked over and looked down into the hole. 6 feet down the dirt was black, rich, loamy. And pressed against the far wall, clear as day, were 2 handprints side by side. Same long fingers, same wide palms, only these were pushing out, not up. Like whatever was down there had turned when it heard the machine coming and braced itself against the side, waiting. They lowered Miss Loretta the next morning. I watched from a truck across the road. When the backhoe pushed the dirt in, I swear the mound settled slower than it should have, like something underneath was helping pack it tight. The new stone came 2 weeks later. Simple granite, Hayes, Loretta M., dates. I went up one evening just before dark to see it proper. Stone sat level at first, but every time I go back now, it's tilted a little more forward, leaning like a man on his knees trying to stand. Grass won't grow on the plot, just bare dirt, soft, always damp no matter the weather. Sometimes when the wind is right, I park up there after midnight, engine off, windows down. If you sit real quiet, you can hear it, slow, patient breathing under the ground. Not loud, just enough to remind you it's still practicing. I keep thinking about Miss Loretta, how she used to bring tomato sandwiches to the church social, how she sang alto so strong the rafters shook. I wonder if she can hear it too, down there in the dark, sharing space with something that's been waiting a long, long time to finish its breath. I reckon she can. because some nights when I drive away, I glance in the rear view and see that stone tilted farther than it was before, like something finally got its shoulders under it, and it's rising.
My brother Luke went into the river on a Tuesday in April, drunk and showing off on the rope swing like we'd done 100 times before. Only this time the water was high and fast from the spring rains, and the rock he always pushed off from was slick with moss. They found him 2 days later tangled in roots 3 miles downstream, face down like he was still looking for the bottom. I was supposed to be with him that night, but I'd stayed home arguing with Mama about money. The guilt sat in my chest heavier than any stone they lowered into that hole at Oakwood Cemetery. The funeral was small. Mama cried quiet, the way mountain women do when the hurt runs too deep for noise. Luke's friends stood around in their only clean shirts, staring at the ground like it might open and give him back. When they started shoveling dirt, I had to walk away. Couldn't stand the sound it made hitting the pine box. That night the trailer felt wrong. Luke's side of the room still smelled like him, Copenhagen and motor oil and the cheap soap he used. His work boots sat by the door where he'd kicked them off, laces knotted the way only he ever tied them. I laid on my mattress staring at the ceiling till the walls started leaning in. Around 2 in the morning, I grabbed my sleeping bag and a flashlight and walked the mile to Oakwood. Didn't think, just walked. The gate was chained, but the gap beside the post was wide enough if you didn't mind scraping skin off your ribs. His grave was still raw, red clay mounded high, no grass yet. The temporary marker had his name typed on a plastic card. I stood there a long time, then laughed, short and broken. "Well, hell, brother," I said out loud, "you always did hog the bed. Guess you got the whole damn place now." I unrolled the bag right on top of the dirt, laid down with my head where his head would be, and told him to keep me company like when we were kids and storms scared me so bad I'd crawl in with him. Don't know when I fell asleep. Woke at first light with grit in my mouth and a taste of iron. My hair was full of that red clay, thick and wet, packed in like somebody'd rubbed it in deliberate. I sat up, spitting, coughing, chunks of soil sliding off my jacket. The sleeping bag was clean, except where my head had been. No wind, no rain, no way that dirt should have been on me. I looked at the mound. My outline was pressed into it clear, like I'd slept on fresh snow, only deeper, like something underneath had settled to match my weight. I told myself I rolled in it, sleepwalking, anything. Went home, showered till the water ran pink, and slept the day away on the couch. That night I tried my own bed again. Woke before dawn choking, lungs burning, dirt under my fingernails and packed so tight behind my teeth I chipped one, spitting it into the sink. Mama found me on the bathroom floor crying and spitting clay. She thought I'd lost my mind with grief. It kept happening. Didn't matter where I fell asleep. Couch, truck seat, my aunt's spare room 2 holler over. Every single time I opened my eyes, there was fresh earth in my mouth, in my ears, caked under my eyelids. Doctors in town gave me pills for night terrors, said I was eating dirt in my sleep, picker they called it. Mama watched me like I might swallow a trowel. I stopped taking the pills after the 3rd night, because they didn't stop the dirt and only made Luke's voice echo louder in my dreams. By the 6th morning I was hollow-eyed and shaking, lips cracked from spitting soil. I hadn't kept a meal down in days. That evening I walked back to Oakwood while the sun was still up, carrying nothing but the clothes on my back. Sat on Luke's grave and talked till my throat went raw. Told him about the fight with Mama, about how sorry I was, about how the river should have took me instead. When the dark came, I lay down again, same spot, face to the stars. Didn't bother with the sleeping bag, just stretched out on the bare dirt and waited. Cold came quick. Ground drank every bit of heat from my bones. I was drifting, half dreaming Luke and me were kids again, fishing below the dam, when the weight settled across my chest. Not crushing, just there,
like when he used to flop down on me to wake me for school, only colder, colder than April ground had any right to be. I opened my eyes and couldn't move. The stars above looked farther away, like I was already deeper than 6 feet. Something shifted beside me, slow, deliberate. I felt the dirt under my shoulder blades soften, give, like another body easing down to match mine inch for inch. Then the voice, right at my ear, Luke's voice, but hollow, like speaking from the bottom of a well. "Quit running off, brother," it whispered. "Ground's softer when we share." The weight pressed closer. I smelled river water and wet clay and something sweeter, the rot that comes after. My lungs wouldn't feel. I tried to scream, and dirt trickled into my open mouth, gentle as a kiss. The last thing I felt was fingers, his fingers, lacing through mine under the soil, squeezing once like they used to when we promised forever. They found me at daylight. Caretaker called the sheriff when he saw me laid out on the grave, filthy but breathing. Mama cried and carried on, had me committed for 3 days, till the doctors decided I wasn't a danger to myself. I came home quiet. Haven't left the cemetery since, not really. I sleep there now, half for months. Got a little pop-up tent back in the pines where the groundskeeper don't mind as long as I keep the gates locked at night. Mama brings food sometimes, leaves it on the bench by the entrance. She don't come close anymore. Says my eyes look too much like Luke's the day they pulled him from the river. People in town say I've gone simple with grief, that I'll snap out of it one day. Maybe, but my pillow stays clean. No more dirt in my mouth when I wake. The mound over Luke's grave has settled perfect, grass finally growing thick and green. Sometimes when the wind is still, I lay my head down right where his heart would be and feel that same weight settle gentle across me, familiar now, almost kind. Last week they put the permanent stone in, simple granite, his name, the dates. I traced the letters with my fingers and felt them shift under my hand, just a little. The death date blurred, stretched, added a second line beneath like there was room for another name. Mine, maybe. Hasn't decided yet. I don't fight it anymore. Some nights I talk to 'em till the stars wheel overhead, tell 'em about the world going on without us. And when the cold starts creeping in, I close my eyes and wait for the weight, for the fingers that find mine in the dark. The ground is softer when we share, and I'm real tired of sleeping alone.
I'd been chasing old churches for 3 years, the kind with white clapboard gone gray and bell towers leaning like drunks. Something about the silence inside them, the way the light falls through broken stained glass and lands wrong on the pews, always settled me. That summer, I was working my way down the Clinch River Valley, sleeping in the truck, eating Vienna sausages and saltines, living cheap so I could keep the camera batteries charged. Pleasant Grove Primitive Baptist set off a gravel road outside Sneedville, half swallowed by kudzu, windows punched out years ago. I parked at the gate just after 10 in the morning, sun already brutal, cicadas loud enough to rattle your teeth. The church itself was picked clean, altar gone, hymnals righted to mulch. I shot a few rolls anyway, then wandered around back where the cemetery spilled down the hillside. Newer stones up top, old ones lower down. Then a little iron fence no taller than my knee closing off a square of ground, shaded by one lone cedar. The babies section. Rows of tiny markers, some no bigger than a loaf of bread, lambs and angels worn smooth by 100 years of rain. Grass grew thin there, pale, like even it didn't want to take root. That's when I saw him. A little boy standing dead center between the stones, maybe 4 or 5 years old, barefoot, wearing faded denim overalls and a striped shirt that had once been bright. His hair was blonde, going white in the sun, cut bowl straight across the brow. He was staring right at me, solemn as a preacher. I raised a hand in greeting, figuring some family was having a picnic farther down the hill I hadn't seen yet. But there were no cars except mine, no voices, nothing but heat shimmering off the gravel.
The strange part hit me slow. The sun was straight overhead, no clouds, and the cedar shadow stretched long across the ground. But the boy didn't cast one, not a hint. His bare feet stood plain on the dirt, and the light fell through him like he was made of smoke you couldn't see. I stepped closer, boots quiet on the grass. "Hey there, bud," I said, soft as I could. "You okay?" He didn't move, just kept those big eyes on me. Then, clear as spring water, he asked, "You seen my mama?" The voice was wrong, too old for his mouth, like a man trying to sound small. My skin prickled. I glanced around again. No adults, no movement anywhere. "No, honey," I told him. "I ain't seen nobody but you. Where'd you come from?" He tilted his head, considering, then smiled a little. Not mean, just empty. I pulled my phone to call the sheriff, thumb already on 911. When I looked up, he was gone. Not walked away, not ducked behind a stone. Gone. Like someone erased a mid-breath. I stood there a long minute, heart thumping, then searched every row, every corner of that little fence. Nothing. Just heat and the smell of cedar and warm dirt. I told myself heat stroke, told myself grief playing tricks. I'd lost a brother when we were kids, sometimes saw him in crowds. I finished shooting the church, hands shaking a little, and drove back to the motel in Rogersville where I was crashing for $10 a night. That evening, I loaded the pictures onto my laptop, curious if the camera had caught anything my eyes missed. The church shots were fine, dust motes hanging in the light, broken pews, all the usual melancholy. Then I got to the baby section. First frame, me standing by the fence, boy in the background, maybe 30 feet away, staring. Second frame, closer, maybe 15 feet. Third, 10. Each shot I'd taken walking the rows, he was behind me, nearer every time. Same barefoot stance, same overalls. And in every single picture, no shadow. The ground under his feet looked sun-blasted and empty. I sat there till the screen went dark, breath shallow. Then I selected every photo from that section and hit delete, held the button till the trash emptied itself. Closed the laptop, like that could make it untrue. Next morning I woke to scratching at the motel door, light, patient, like a cat wanting in. I opened it slow, chain still latched, and there he was, sitting cross-legged on the concrete walkway, holding a dandelion gone to seed, turning it slow between dirty fingers. Sun was behind him, pouring across the parking lot, and still no shadow. He looked up and smiled the same empty smile. "I waited," he said. "Mama's coming soon." I slammed the door so hard the chain rattled loose, stood with my back against it, heart trying to punch through my ribs. When I found the nerve to look through the peephole, he was still sitting there, patient as stone. I haven't opened that door in 3 days. He never knocks hard, never calls out loud, just scratching now and then, or I'll hear bare feet padding across the walkway, back and forth, slow. Sometimes he hums, some lullaby I almost remember from childhood. The motel owner banged on the wall yesterday, said quit making noise, people trying to sleep. I wanted to tell him it ain't me, but what would I say that wouldn't sound insane? The ice machine is 10 steps down the breezeway. I ran out of water the first night, crackers yesterday. I drink what's in the toilet tank when I have to. The curtains stay drawn. Every so often I peel one back an inch, and he's there. Sometimes sitting, sometimes standing, sometimes lying on his side facing the door, like he's listening for me to breathe. Always that dandelion, though the seeds are long gone now. Still no shadow, no matter the angle of the sun. Last night the power went out around 2. Whole motel went dark. I sat on the bed in the black, listening. The scratching stopped. For the first time in days, silence. Then the softest sound, right against the door, like a cheek laid to the wood. "I'm tired," he whispered, voice muffled but clear enough to freeze my blood. I haven't slept since. The sun's coming up again now, gray light leaking around the curtains. I can hear him moving out there, little feet on concrete, humming that same lullaby. Sometimes it sounds like he's closer, like the door isn't there at all. I keep thinking about those tiny stones at Pleasant Grove, how many there were, how long some of them were set. I keep wondering whose mama he's waiting on, and how long she's been gone. And I keep wondering what happens when he gets tired of waiting.
I never put much stock into old folks' stories about Chestnut Hill. They'd sit on the bench outside the feed store every October, whittling and spitting, telling the same tale about the lantern that walks the cemetery every Halloween night. Said it was old Silas McCandless, the grave digger who dropped dead in '92 with his shovel still in his hands, right in the middle of a plot he was digging for a child that died of the fever. Heart gave out, they said, dropped straight down into the half-finished hole and never got back up. They buried him in the same grave the next day, child on top, Silas underneath like he was still holding the space. Ever since, on the anniversary, a lantern comes floating through the rows. No hand, no body, just a glow moving slow between the stones like a man checking his work one last time. I laughed when I was younger, thought it was just something to scare kids away from drinking up there. By the time I was 30, I'd taken over my daddy's stonework business, cutting names, setting monuments, keeping the old ones level. Chestnut Hill was half my bread and butter. I knew every inch of that ground, every sinking plot, every tree that drops roots thick enough to tilt a marble slab. I'd worked there in pouring rain, in snow, in the dead of summer when the clay baked hard as brick. Never saw a thing but rabbits and groundhogs. Then came October 31st, 3 years ago. The Hensley family had waited too long to order their mama's stone. Died in August, but the kids couldn't agree on the wording till the leaves started falling. I promised it'd be set before winter set in hard. That afternoon, the sky was low and gray, wind sharp enough to cut right through Carhart. I hauled the stone up the hill myself on the dolly, mixed mortar in the bed of my truck, worked fast because the light was dying early. By the time I had it level and the tools cleaned, the sun was gone and the temperature dropped fast. Cemetery looked different after dark. Stones turned to silhouettes, the whole ridge quiet the way only a graveyard gets when the birds quit for the night. I was kneeling to pack my trowel when I saw it. A soft yellow glow coming through the older section, back where the ground dips and the cedars crowd close. At first I thought some kid with a flashlight playing a prank. Then I realized there was no beam sweeping the ground, just the flame itself, steady, floating maybe 4 feet off the dirt. It moved between the rows, slow, deliberate, the same pace a man takes when he's counting steps. The wind was gusting hard enough to rattle the metal flower holders, but the flame never danced, never leaned, burned straight and calm like it was indoors. I stood up slow, heart already knocking. The lantern came on, bobbing a little with each invisible footfall. Past the Confederate section, past the baby stones, came straight toward me. I told myself to move, to laugh it off, but my boots felt nailed to the ground. When it was maybe 30 yards off, I could see it clear. Old-styled kerosene lantern, glass cracked, wire handle swaying like somebody carried it natural. Only there was no arm, no shoulder, nothing, just the light and the dark around it. It stopped 6 feet away. The heat rolled off it wrong, thick, heavy, like standing too close to a wood stove, but the air itself was ice cold. My breath fogged between us. The flame leaned forward a little, the way a man does when he's studying something close. Then it spoke. Voice sounded like a shovel biting dry clay, low and gritty. "You're in my hole." I looked down and near wet myself. I'd been kneeling right at the edge of a fresh dug grave I hadn't noticed in the dark. Rectangular cut, side straight, dirt piled neat on the downhill side. No marker, no funeral tent, no sign anybody had been working it. But the earth was turned clean, dark, loamy, smelling like it had just been opened that evening. My boot prints went right to the lip and stopped.
The lantern lifted a fraction, like a head tilting. I jumped backwards so hard I fell over a low stone, scrambled up and ran. Tools clattered out of my hands, trowel, level, the rubber mallet Daddy gave me when I started the business. I didn't stop to grab 'em. The lantern followed, not fast, never fast, just steady, keeping the same distance, glow sliding between the stones like it knew every path I'd take. I could hear the faint clink of glass, the soft slosh of kerosene inside. Wind howled through the cedars, but that flame never flickered once. I hit the main gate doing 40 on foot, chain and padlock rattling as I vaulted it. Landed hard on the gravel outside, rolled my ankle, kept limping till I reached the truck. Didn't look back till I had the door slammed and the engine cranked. In the rear view, the lantern was at the gate, hovering just inside the bars, waiting. Then it turned, slow, and drifted back into the dark. I drove home doing 80 on those curves, half expecting the glow to come floating up the road behind me. It didn't. Next morning, November 1st, I found the first shovelful. One neat pile of red clay on my front doorstep, still damp, smelling like the inside of that open grave. I swept it in the backyard, told myself kids, Halloween leftover, anything. Next day, another pile, same spot. Every morning since, rain or shine, frozen or muddy, there's one extra shovelful waiting when I open the door. Sometimes it's got rocks in it, or a root, or once a rusted nail the length of my finger. I quit sweeping it away, just step over it now. I went back for my tools a week later, middle of the day. The grave I'd stood in was filled in, smooth, no trace. Grass already trying to grow. My trowel and level lay on top like somebody set 'em gentle. The mallet was gone. I don't work after dark anymore, don't work Halloween at all. Drive past the cemetery sometimes and feel the pull like a hook behind my ribs. That lantern ain't come for me again, not yet. But every October 31st, I sit on my porch with the shotgun across my knees and wait for midnight. Wind always dies right around then. Air gets thick. And somewhere up on the ridge, I can see it start moving between the stones. Patient as death, making its rounds. I reckon one of these years the doorstep dirt's gonna be deeper, maybe a foot, maybe 6. And when the hole out front is big enough, that lantern'll come floating down the road, steady and slow, and I'll know it's time to lay down my tools for good. Till then, I keep the porch light burning and try not to count the piles.
Aunt Lena raised me more than my own mama ever did. After Daddy left and Mama started staring at the bottom of bottles, Lena took me in without a word, gave me the back bedroom in her little cinder block house on Greenbrier Ridge, fed me pinto beans and cornbread, taught me how to split kindling and how to keep quiet when the hurt got too loud. She was small, barely 5 foot, but strong the way mountain women get, hands like hickory, voice soft until it needed to cut. She had this knock she used whenever she came to my door. 3 slow taps, pause, 2 more. Never failed. Even when I was 16 and hateful, that knock could pull me out of whatever black mood I'd fallen into. She died sudden on a Tuesday in March. Stroke, they said. Found her in the kitchen floor still holding the coffee pot, like she'd been on her way to pour me a cup, even though I hadn't lived there in years. The family was flat broke. Funeral policy had lapsed. Mama too drunk to notice. We scraped together what we could, sold her good sewing machine, passed the hat at the church. Still only enough for a pine box and a quick service. I stood there while they lowered her, that cheap pine looking thinner than kindling, and I hated every soul in the county for letting it happen. First night after the burial, I slept at the old house. Couldn't stand the thought of it empty. Dog wouldn't settle, kept pacing and whining low. Around 3 in the morning, I woke straight up, heart already racing. Knock, 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 pause, knock, knock. Same rhythm she'd used on my door 1,000 times.
only it was coming from under the floorboards, dull and muffled, like knuckles on pine. I told myself wind, house settling, anything. Dog hid under the bed and shook so hard the frame rattled. I laid there till dawn listening for it again, but the night went still. Next morning I laughed it off, said I'd been dreaming. Second night it came again, same hour, same knock. Third night I couldn't stand it. I grabbed a flashlight, pulled on my boots, and drove the 4 miles to Greenbrier Cemetery with the dog riding shotgun and whining the whole way. Grave was still raw, red clay mounded high, carnations from the service already wilted brown. I stood at the foot with the light shaking in my hand, frost crunching under my boots, breath fogging white. And it started. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock. Coming from right under my feet, patient as Sunday morning. I knew that rhythm in my bones. I dropped to my knees and pressed my ear to the cold dirt, and it sounded closer, desperate almost, like she was trying to be polite even then. "Lena," I shouted, voice cracking. "Aunt Lena, it's me." The knocking stopped dead. Silence so complete my ears rang. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. No caller ID. I answered without thinking. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock. Same rhythm, tinny through the speaker, like someone holding the phone against wood. I screamed her name and the line went dead. I beat on that mound with my fist till my knuckles bled, begging her to knock again, to tell me what to do. Nothing answered but the wind. I called the preacher, the funeral director, anybody who'd listen. Told them something was wrong, told them we had to open it. They looked at me like I'd lost my mind with grief. Took a week and a life insurance investigator sniffing around for fraud before they finally agreed to exhume, just to shut me up, they said. They brought the backhoe at dawn. I stood there in the cold with my hands shoved deep in my coat while the bucket bit into the clay. Pine docks came up splendid at the corners, lid warped from the weight. When they pried it open, I had to turn away at first, couldn't stand to see her again. Then I looked. Inside was worse than any nightmare. The satin lining was shredded. Lid bore deep furrows, claw marks raked so hard the wood curled in ribbons. Her fingers, Lord, her fingers were worn to bone at the tips, nails split and gone, blood dried black under what was left. Her face was turned toward the lid, mouth open like she'd been calling out, eyes wide and filmed, but still somehow looking right at me. Coroner poked around, muttered about soil compression and panic reflex, wrote it up as premature burial, even though the death certificate was plain as day. They closed it quick, reburied her in a county vault this time, concrete liner, steel lid, said that would settle it. It didn't. First few nights after the second burial, the knocking came from deeper, fainter, like she was having to work harder to reach me. Then it changed. Started coming from inside the walls of the old house, from the floorboards, sometimes from the tin roof when it rained. Softer now, almost gentle, like she was tired and just reminding me she was still trying. I sold the place, moved clear across the county, took an apartment above the hardware store in town. Thought distance would fix it. First night in the new place, I woke at 3 to the same knock on the bedroom door. Dog wasn't with me anymore. Had to give him away. He wouldn't stop shaking. I laid there staring at the ceiling, and the knock came again, polite, patient. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock. I don't answer anymore. Don't shout, don't cry. Just pull the pillow over my head and wait for it to stop. Some nights it goes on for hours. Some nights it's only once, like she's checking I'm still breathing. Last week I went back to Greenbrier, stood at the vault with a bouquet of grocery store daisies. Concrete was cold and clean, no marks, no sound. I laid the flowers down and told her I was sorry, told her I'd tried. Wind picked up and carried my words away. That night the knocking didn't come from under the floor or inside the walls. It came from inside my chest, soft, steady, like a second heart learning a rhythm. Knock, 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 pause, knock, knock. I think she's close now, closer than she's ever been, and I'm real tired of keeping her waiting outside.
Fort Hill National Cemetery sits on a knob above the French Broad. Row after row of little white government stones, all facing the same direction, like men waiting for a command that never comes. I drove a delivery route for the bread company out of Asheville, and every morning around 5:30, I'd take the old river road to save time. The cemetery gate was always open, no fence along the front, just a low stone wall. So I started pulling in there to drink my coffee and wake up proper before the sun burned the mist off the water. Place was quiet, respectful. I'd park facing the ranks, engine off, radio low, and watch the world turn gray to gold. Never bothered nobody, never got out except to piss behind the maintenance shed when I had to. First morning I saw him, I thought I was still half asleep. A man stepped out of the fog where the older section starts, Confederate plots, sunken and forgotten, stones leaning like drunks. He wore a ragged gray coat, kepi hat tilted forward, beard full but trimmed once upon a time. Tall, thin, moving stiff like joints hurt. He stopped in front of one particular marker, came to attention sharp enough to make you flinch, and raised a slow salute. Held it maybe 10 seconds. Then the mist folded around him and he was gone. I blinked coffee out of my eyes and figured I'd dreamed it. Next morning he was there again, same time, 5:47 on the dash clock, same stone, same salute. I wrote the minute down in the margin of my route sheet. Happened every day that week. I started looking forward to it, strange as that sounds. There was something peaceful about it, like watching an old man feed pigeons. I'd nod at him from the truck, lift my thermos a little. He never looked my way, just saluted and faded. Eighth morning changed everything. Sky was clear, frost thick on the grass, air so cold it tasted like metal. I pulled in same as always, cut the engine, rolled the window down to feel the bite. Mist hung low between the rows. Right on time he stepped out, clearer than I'd ever seen him. I could make out the patched elbows on the coat, the darker stain across the chest that might have been blood once, the way his boots didn't quite touch the ground. He stopped at his stone, snapped to attention, and saluted. Only this time he didn't fade. He lowered the hand slow, turned his head like a turret on a tank, and looked straight at me. Eyes weren't eyes anymore, just black pits full of round lead balls shifting like gravel in a can. I dropped my coffee in my lap and scalded myself, but couldn't feel it. He started walking. Boots never made a sound on the frozen grass, but every step left a print that steamed a second, then filled with frost again. Came straight across the rows, past stones with names I'd read 100 times, past a flagpole where the rope clinked soft in the wind. I fumbled for the key, hands numb. He reached the truck, stopped 2 feet from my window, and saluted again, slow, perfect, like the first time he ever learned it. Then he spoke, voice dry as November leaves scraping pavement. Your war ain't over neither. I stomped the starter, engine caught on the 3rd try. I threw gravel peeling out, fishtailed onto the river road doing 60 before I touched the brake. Looked in the mirror and he was still there, in the middle of the drive, arm raised, getting smaller but never moving, like the road itself was stretching him thin. I didn't stop shaking till I hit the bakery dock in Asheville. Told myself sun in my eyes, bad coffee, grief. I'd lost my own granddaddy young, wore his dog tag some days. Anything but what I saw. That night I couldn't sleep. Kept seeing those black eyes full of lead. Around 2 in the morning I gave up, pulled my boots on and drove back. Moon was down, sky full of hard stars. I left the truck outside the wall this time, walked in on foot with a flashlight I didn't turn on. Found his stone easy,
Name was worn off years ago, just a lamb carved at the top, and the dates 1842, 1864. 3 rows down, same section, there was a blank marble marker nobody'd claimed yet, waiting for whenever the VA got around to it. My name was cut fresh into the face. First, middle, last, spelled right, deeper than any chisel had business cutting in one night. Birth date matched my license. Death date was today's. I stood there till my feet went numb, waiting for morning. Sun came up pale behind the mountains, and the writing was still there, sharp as if it'd been done yesterday afternoon. I scratched at it with my keys till my fingers bled, didn't even smudge. I ain't been back since. Changed my route, take the interstate now, even though it adds 40 minutes and burns more gas. Some mornings I still wake at 5:47 exact, heart hammering, tasting gunpowder I never fired. I keep my granddaddy's dog tags in the glove box now, rub 'em like a worry stone when the feeling gets too heavy. Sometimes when the wind shifts just right off the river, I swear I can hear boots marching slow across frost, pause, the faint creak of a sleeve rising. And I know if I ever drive past again, he'll be waiting at that empty stone 3 rows down, arm raised, patient, telling me my time's come due. I ain't ready to find out if he's right.
St. Mary's sat on the ridge above the coal camp where I grew up, a little stone Catholic church the Irish miners built when the company still pretended to care about souls. Christmas Eve was always the one night the place felt alive. Candles in every window, pine boughs on the altar, voices raised high enough to rattle the stained glass. I'd been going to midnight mass there since I was old enough to sit still, even after the mines closed and the town started dying slow. That year I was 27, back from Knoxville for the holidays, sleeping in my old bedroom while Mama coughed her lungs loose in the next room. I walked to the service alone. The roads were already icing and she couldn't manage the hill. The Mass was beautiful the way only mountain Catholic can be. Organ wheezing, priest half drunk on communion wine, women in their best coats singing "O Holy Night" like they were trying to hold the whole holler together with harmony. When it ended, folks lingered inside, hugging and wishing Merry Christmas, stamping snow off boots. I slipped out early to light a cigarette on the side porch, figuring I'd wait till the crowd thinned before walking home. Snow had started thick, fat flakes drifting straight down, already covering the tracks in the cemetery next door. I was down to the filter when I heard the gate groan shut. The big iron one at the entrance, heavy as a bank vault. I looked over the rail and saw the chain pulled tight, padlock snapped closed. Somebody's idea of a prank, I thought, locked the last drunk in with the dead. I stubbed the cigarette and started down the steps, planning to hop the low wall like we did when we were kids. Only the wall was higher than I remembered, and the snow was piling fast, and by the time I got to the gate, the chain wouldn't budge. Lock was frozen solid. I shook it, yelled a little, but the church was empty now, windows dark, everybody gone home to their families. My phone showed 1 bar and no service. Snow kept coming. I figured I'd hunker down in the church till morning, sleep on a pew. I turned back, and that's when I heard 'em. Singing. Women's voices, soft at first, drifting across the cemetery like smoke. I knew the tune before the words came. Silent night, only slower, deeper, the way the old ones sang it when death was close in the house. 4-part harmony, perfect, notes blending so sweet it hurt. I stood there with snow melting cold down my neck and felt the pull, same as when I was a boy and the choir practiced on Wednesday nights. The sound was coming from the back corner, the pauper's field, where the company buried men who died owing money. No stones there, just wooden crosses rotted to splinters years ago, ground sunk in long trenches. I told myself to go inside the church, bar the door, wait for daylight. Instead, I walked toward it. Snow muffled everything, made the world small and white, and the singing grew clearer with every step.
I stopped behind a big angel monument that guards the hill and looked. They were standing in a circle, 30 or more, figures wrapped in burial shrouds gone gray with age and weather. Snow fell through them like they weren't solid enough to catch it. Women mostly, a few men, faces the color of creek clay after rain. Their mouths were open too wide, jaws stretched unnatural, and the sound pouring out was the purest thing I ever heard. No breath between phrases, no pause for air, just one long, perfect chord that rose and fell like something alive. Where eyes should have been were soft, glowing dents, pale blue like the heart of a flame, all looking inward at the empty center of the circle. I dropped down behind the angel, knees in snow, heart trying to climb out my throat. The singing never faltered. I peeked again, and one of them had turned ahead, slow, like moving hurt, and those glowing dents fixed right on me. The others followed, one by one, till every hollow face aimed my way, but the mouths kept moving, voices never breaking harmony. I crawled backward on my belly till the monument hid me, then ran crouched over till I reached the church steps, pounded the door, rattled the handle, locked. Of course it was locked. I curled up against the stone wall with my coat pulled over my head and listened while the singing went on for hours, sometimes close enough I felt it in my chest, sometimes far off like they were walking the rows. Snow kept coming. Near dawn the voices thinned, faded to a single soprano holding the last note till it break apart. I must have dozed, because next thing I knew the caretaker was shaking me awake, cursing about drunks sleeping in the portico. Gate stood open, chain hanging loose. Snow had stopped sometime in the night. He grumbled but gave me a ride down the ridge in his truck. We passed the popper's field on the way out. The ground inside that circle was bare, snow melted clean in a perfect ring maybe 20 feet across. Grass underneath was green, steaming in the cold, warm as July. I asked him if he heard anything. He looked at me strange and said, "The dead don't sing, boy. That's why we put 'em in the ground." I tried to forget. Went back to Knoxville, got a job pouring concrete, told myself it was carbon monoxide from the incense, grief over mama, anything. But every Christmas Eve since, something happens. I'll be driving home late, radio off, heater barely working, and when I reach the stretch of road below St. Mary's, the engine coughs once and dies. Lights go dark. Car rolls dead to the shoulder every time, same spot, like somebody reached in and turned the key. I sit there till the windows fog with my breath and the singing starts. Same voices, same perfect harmony, drifting down the ridge soft as falling snow. I never roll the window down anymore, never look up toward the cemetery. Just grip the wheel and wait, tears freezing on my cheeks while they sing the old hymns through the night. Sometimes I know the words, and my mouth tries to shape 'em, but I bite my tongue till it bleeds so I don't join in. Sun comes up slow behind the mountains, and the engine turns over like nothing happened. I drive away without looking back. Mama passed 2 years ago. I buried her in the new section at the foot of the hill, paid extra for the plot with the view. Some nights I dream I'm walking up there, and the circle's bigger now, the bare ring wider, steam rising gentle in the cold. And there's an empty place waiting, right at the edge, just my size. I don't fight the car anymore when it dies. I just close my eyes and listen, because some hymns, once you learn the tune, never quite leave you. And I know them all by heart now.